Welcome to You and I. I'm Jackie Kai Ellis, and it's my genuine hope that through sharing our most vulnerable stories we know, in the moments where it matters so much, that we're actually not alone. It needs to be said, I'm not a professional, just someone with some personal experience to share. I do hope this is helpful, but as always, take the advice that resonates and ignore what doesn't. And don't hesitate to seek out professional help through a trusted source. We have resources on our website. For the next couple months, I'll be focused on writing my upcoming book, To You Who Wonders. It's an advice column meets memoir. So to make space for that, I'm sharing words from my past column, Ask JKE, one that I wrote for Virtuvi's magazine, Natural Habitat. It's been a few years since I wrote them. Some advice is timeless, and yet my perspective has changed so much too. In these episodes, I'll read out the column and also share my reflections, what's evolved, what I would write differently, or what I was experiencing at the time I wrote it. Today, I'll be reading the column I wrote in answer to the question, how did you prepare to jump? They write, Dear JKE, when did you know you wanted to work for yourself? How did you decide? When did you know you were ready? How did you prepare to jump? Signed, KHJ. Dear KHJ, I've wanted my own business for as long as I can remember. Both my parents owned their businesses, and when I was a child, conversations at the dinner table revolved around solving the puzzles of their clients, employees, and contracts. I tagged along with my mom as she went from meeting to meeting and rolled bags of pennies, aka the babysitter, in empty boardrooms at my dad's office. This life was familiar to me. Entrepreneurship for them was as challenging, risky, and grueling as it is for entrepreneurs today. But necessity decided their path. As Chinese immigrants with little education, holding down multiple jobs as janitor, waitress, cashier, or construction worker weren't enough to get by, let alone enough to care for our extended family. The need to start businesses far outweighed fear, so they jumped, but carefully. My parents wanted a more secure career for me, a steady paycheck. Above all, they didn't want me to struggle for money because they did so on my behalf for so long. But the dinner table puzzles the industrious Swiss Army nature of entrepreneurship, the twists, the turns. It all ended up fascinating me much more and suiting me much more than the traditional careers they had worked so hard for me to have. For me, the realities of entrepreneurial life were demystified early on. I saw firsthand that business owners rarely clock out. I saw that they didn't have just one boss, but were responsible for each and every client. They worried about employees, weighed risks, navigated social politics. But I also saw that they had the freedom to craft how they worked, to shape the values they worked for, and to choose which risks were worth taking. Now I have even greater freedoms and wider choices. I can afford to take risks because I have less at stake. A family of 10 at home is not depending on me for their survival. This isn't to say that I don't get scared. I have my fears. They're different from survival, but no less paralyzing if left unexamined. I fear failure. I fear my ego being bruised, my self-worth still somewhat coiled together with the world's definition of success. Everyone fears something. It's what holds us back. Look under the bed. Fears are natural and wonderful things. They protect us from danger. They also make us human, humble, and capable of empathy. If we don't look under the bed, though, we won't really know what monster we have on our hands, or if there is a monster at all. The longer we avoid it, the more the monster can grow to irrational proportions. So the way we deactivate fear is simply by looking at it. The monster out there. I frequently have business ideas that seem fun or lucrative, though I often deliberate each and even write business plans for each. At the end of my process, I choose not to pursue most of them. For me, the purpose of the business plan is to ask questions, is to clarify the vision, to understand my intentions, to know the risks, the investment, the sacrifices, the benefits, the viability of an idea. Ultimately, it's to see if I truly feel passionate about the idea, enough to do the hard work to make it successful, to test how much I want it. The monster in here. When it comes to starting businesses, most of us are scared of losing security, of failure, or of embarrassment. Sometimes we're afraid that failure will confirm an even greater fear, that maybe we weren't worthy enough to succeed after all. We must know what we need to overcome in order to overcome it. The self-reflection is the most challenging, as it requires vulnerability and honesty. I found it helpful, and I believe these fears deserve to be challenged, especially if they cause you harm or hold you back from something you truly desire. Still, it's important to be as kind as you are honest with yourself, and to remember that people around you who are as kind as they are honest make for very good sounding boards. The moment you're ready. We can't be fully ready for what we cannot predict. We can prepare as much as we want, but life is unpredictable, and so is starting a business. I know I am ready to jump when the desire to see an idea come to life is greater than my fear of the unknown. It's subtle, but eventually the longing becomes hard to ignore. Preparing to jump. Jumping doesn't necessarily mean running off a cliff unprepared. My parents planned their risks as pragmatically as they could. My mom kept her jobs, making a rope for my dad to hold as he scaled down the side of the rock face. She carefully climbed down, going back to school part-time after my dad had built a foundation high enough for her to survive a fall, if one should happen. Many new entrepreneurs work day jobs until their businesses have enough momentum that it makes sense to stop. Even in the beginning months of Virtuvi, I took on a few design jobs on the side, just in case. Why choose to jump the whole way down if there is a rope? The questions never stop. At all stages of your business's growth, there will be new questions to ask, to keep asking. Ask for advice from people who have been where you are, and don't spend energy reinventing the wheel. Ask about the things you don't know, and about the things you don't even know that you don't know. But also consider the source. You wouldn't necessarily take health advice from your lawyer, nor legal advice from your doctor. People have different experiences, different scars, motivations, and levels of expertise. Listen, examine, glean what you can, and leave the rest if it doesn't serve you, my advice included. Plan for help. A business advisor once asked me to draw 3 lists. First, things you're great at and love doing. Second, things you do well but find draining. And third, things you're not great at, period. He suggested hiring others for the things in the third list immediately, eventually hiring for the second list once finances allowed, and focusing my energy on the first list, as it would be my greatest contribution to the business. Define your walkaway point. The more we invest in something, the harder it is to walk away from, even if it sometimes pushes us to worse outcomes. This is essentially what's known as the sunk cost fallacy. It's especially tricky to navigate when you're into the business already. Objectivity is hard to achieve when markers of success are subjective or when you're stubborn, like me. Before opening Virtuvi, I defined a point at which I would be willing to walk away. For me, it was an objective marker of financial loss over a certain number of years of investment. Even if I had reached that marker, I might not have chosen to quit, but it gave me peace of mind to know that I had defined exactly what I was willing to sacrifice and that I was not obligated to give more. I allowed myself permission to walk away when that marker was reached and also gave myself a built-in checkpoint. Nothing to lose. You'll never know everything. Even after asking all the questions you can think of, there will come a time when you just have to jump or not. You can't wait forever, or you'll spend your whole life waiting, and the waiting will decide for you. You can only make a decision based on the information you have right now. There will always be unknowns. In the end, the choice is whether you trust yourself to navigate the inevitable twists and turns that will come. And what if you do fail? Would it still be worth a try? When I wrote this article, it was in the middle of the pandemic and not in the middle of a tenuous financial climate where jumping would be that much scarier than it would be even in the best of scenarios. I do remember before deciding to open Boku, paralyzed by fear and knowing the only way through was to look my worst case scenario in the face. I allowed myself to voice it. Going bankrupt, having to move back in with my family in my mid-30s, having smug faces gloat the words "I told you so." Though, after I had said it out loud, it really didn't seem so bad after all. I mean, I could survive bruised egos and ruined credit. I reasoned that at 35, there was so much time to build a new career or to go back to an old one if things didn't work out. And even if those backup plans didn't work out, I was very hireable. And so my plan was to get a job at Starbucks, further benefits package, and work my way up from there. It gave me a sense of security knowing that I had my eyes open, that I could look at all the risk and decide with each potential pothole or cliffside whether it was a sacrifice I'd be willing to make. I remember reading that most business owners don't have any income for the first 2 years, so I planned for that. I planned out what I'd do if it went longer than 2 years, and if I'd be willing to sell my apartment to stay afloat. I imagined where I would shower and sleep if I did. I decided which sacrifices were worthy just to have the experience of building my dream and how much loss would be too much loss. And in looking soberly at it all, I wrote down a list of when I would give myself permission to walk away, and I planned which day I'd look at this list. Now, I didn't need this list in the end. My dream had come true. The bakery was financially successful, and I didn't have to consider many of those sacrifices. But some of the sacrifices, the emotional and personal ones, wore me down more than I cared to admit. And I found it increasingly harder to tackle an ever-growing list of responsibilities in the midst of extreme burnout. This was the one thing I hadn't accounted for. I never thought the energy and passion for my dream would wane. It didn't even cross my mind. And because I never clocked out and I never stopped thinking about the business, the to-do list never stopped getting longer and heavier. As years went on, it just became harder and harder for me to feel excited or grateful for something that was once my dream. I thought that there was something wrong with me, that maybe I was being flaky or spoiled. I felt guilty about this. I had imagined my community centered around the daily routine of my bakery. I had imagined my whole life devoted to this. Felt like I was betraying my own dreams. So I pushed those feelings away, pushing through, hoping it was just a phase. But the longer I ignored these feelings, the more they intensified, and I ended up making excuses not to be at the bakery, which only hurt the business and my team. Deep down inside, I had already moved on, but I couldn't leave because I wasn't yet able to admit that I was drowning in what was now someone else's dream. I'm still not sure what happened, but all I know is after it opened, something inside me changed. The experience of opening the bakery itself had changed me. When I could no longer bear to live a life that didn't feel like mine, I finally allowed myself a new thought. I allowed myself to change. I gave myself space for evolution. I accepted who I was. And though I may not have been normal by society's ruler, I let go of who I and everyone else thought I was supposed to be, someone living her dream. And then I embraced who I was. Someone who dreams. I'm still learning to accept that I won't follow a linear path, and that might be disappointing and uncomfortable for other people. I'm learning to accept that I'm not necessarily bad at follow-through, but that I will naturally move on when I've learned everything I need from any one experience. I'm still embracing that maybe my goal is not to make something successful in the eyes of others, but that I want to spend my life learning who I am, and honoring that. I give this information because I want anyone who hears this to not only feel empowered to create what you dream, but also to feel the permission and freedom to leave your dream, to evolve, to change your mind, to learn who you are and to learn who you're not by just trying something, to dream again, to jump again and again, if you so choose, and to do that with open and compassionate eyes. I hope you enjoyed this episode in the Ask JKE series. I hope you got something helpful out of this. If anything, know that you're not alone. You see, we all struggle, mourn, yearn, question, laugh, and cry. No matter our age, background, or titles, at our core, we're all not so different, you and I. To submit questions you'd like me to explore, either on the podcast or in my upcoming book, To You Who Wonders, write to us on the contact page on youandipodcast.com or at toyouwhowonders.com. If you enjoyed this episode, like and subscribe to our channel, which helps others who might be interested find us. And feel free to share this episode with someone who may find it helpful as well. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Jackie Kai Ellis, and this is You and I.